haven't been given the signal that this is streaming on Facebook. So
it's
what I'm going to do,
now.
it is streaming now. Okay, webinar now. Yes! Fantastic. So pumped, so excited. The boys are back. The boys are back. Wow,
Coronavirus edition of MDA podcast.
I got to tell you, it's so good to we look MDA. So I want to let everyone know it was a combination of travel, wrong places, wrong time. Then the chairman of MDA is John McGrath. He put his hand down and he says, I believe that we need to be together face to face. And that's why I don't want to do one by the phone. Let's do it. So he held off a couple of weeks. Then I started traveling again for 4 weeks. And then all of a sudden, Troy said, Tom, we need to do MDA. And guess what? The chairman couldn't overrule not being face-to-face because the government turned around and said, you can't do it face-to-face. So guess what? Not only are you going to get the Spotify version, not only are you going to get the Apple iTunes version, you're getting the face-to-face version here. Good to see you, John. Good to see you, Troy.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, Tom.
Tom, have you noticed Troy's put the beauty filter on again? Like you and I, here we are in stark reality, looking, 3 out of 10. And Troy's there, as handsome as he is, but he's actually layered some form of beauty filter. He's got some green screen backdrop of some magical New York loft studio with a vertical bookcase, making us all look very old-fashioned there.
The guy that needs it least. And on top of that, we haven't even touched on the audio yet, John, because we do know
that. Show us your audio? Just to embarrass yourself. He's got the John Laws golden microphone, special edition. So you and I sound like gibberers, and he sounds like a late night DJ voice. So
you've got to adapt. You've got to adapt to a changing market. And right now, my geekiness, my tech setup is actually paying off for me in some ways. But Tom, this is an exciting one, right? Because this is our first ever virtual live stream that we've done with MDA. We've done video before, but this is our first ever one where we're live with audience, people tuning in, watching this. And it was unannounced as well, because we wanted to surprise everyone, because we've all been receiving questions and text messages going, when's MDA coming back? We want it back. We need it back. We need questions answered. This is great.
It was unannounced because we were bloody disorganised.
I'm trying to...
It was unannounced because the thought came to my head at 8:53 a.m. after I'd finished the bay run, and I actually just text Susan, and that's why it's happening here. But I've got to say, before we go on, we're talking about sound. I allocate 2 times a day where I catch up on the news. One of the things I catch up on news on is in the evening on the Sky News channel. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed that what happens is Zoom, or they use Skype. And that is going to be one of the things that, because I know coming from News Corp and I know what they're like when things get tough, they look at how we can do business in a more efficient way. And I will say it right here, right now. You will notice post COVID-19, guests won't be flown into studios. Guests won't be taken to a certain spot where you've got these added costs, that they will actually use Skype or Zoom, go to people's houses. And what you'll notice is that they are wearing, have I got any here? Yes. That a lot of them have actually wearing headphones, right? And you'll notice that sometimes they wear both, but sometimes they just wear one in their ear and they've plugged it in. And that's why, because the sound quality, for those that are getting to use Zoom, the sound quality does sound better if you've actually got a microphone that you can speak to. The AirPods are okay. It's nowhere near as good. It's nowhere near as good as what Troy's got. Troy's gone off and spent $7,300 of our budget on a microphone, right? Our poor chairman sitting there, he's got no microphone. He signed off on the check, right?
Just talking computer. So it's funny, Tom, you mentioned that, because I think that funny things change our lives. And right now I'm sitting here thinking, how many times did I go downstairs, get in a car, drive half an hour, get out of the car, find a park, go upstairs, have a bit of small talk, then get into the meat of the meeting, then reverse it, and then 3 hours later you ended up with a 15-minute good chat and polluting the atmosphere, costing you time and money, could have done 6 meetings. Whereas this now with Zoom or Skype, whatever you want to use, is becoming a really effective way. So I think this will be good for the environment. There's going to be a lot less pollution because I think people will start realising there's so many. Do I have to really get on a plane and travel to Melbourne to have that one-on-one meeting for an hour, or could I just jump onto Zoom? I think it's an interesting time, full stop. But I think for technology, I sent you that thing. I don't know if you read it, Tommy, or posted.
I did.
I mean, that's very good, Troy. Did you see it? It said, answer the question, who is in charge of your IT strategy, CEO, CIO, or COVID-19? Which is very true, though, because this technology, until we've been forced to use it, been sitting there. Like we could have done this all along. I mean, we're having, Tom, as you know, and you've been kind enough to be a guest on it, daily webinars for our team. And I think whether you're a franchisor or a franchisee, even an agent, you can now bridge the gap between locations and with this technology very effectively. And this is kind of just as good as being in a room, really. So it's I think
John, if I was a CEO now of a large organisation that owns premises in the heart of the CBD, that signs off the expenses of one of their executives, that flies from Sydney to Melbourne, goes and sleeps at the Langham Hotel, has a meal at Rockpool, wakes up in the morning, has a meeting from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock, flies back to Sydney, pretty much in the afternoon says, shit, I've just come back from Melbourne. So they do a few little emails there, and that is pretty much 1.5 days gone, and including all the expenses, including a $900 return ticket, right, to actually have a meeting. I think CEOs are going to turn around and say, guess what? That was a way that we did things. We did it for whatever reason. It's got an expiry use by date like milk and cheese has. And I think some of those things are going to change.
Yeah, I think the airlines, we know they're going through a horrific time now and don't wish an ongoing horrific time for them, but I think they're going to lose a lot of business because, there's nothing that replaces having a human being there. Definitely from time to time, I think, if you've got an organisation which is sort of up and down the coast or around Australia, you do need to do some travel. But I think a lot of it could be effectively. And Troy, I've just been thinking about our internal training overnight, about how many times you've jumped on the plane on a monthly basis to go to Melbourne, Brisbane, Goldie, ACT to do, which is a good thing, by the way. And I think it's a good thing, and we still need to keep it up. But you could do half of that, and half of it, you could have 20 people here on Zoom or Skype and just do the sort of stuff we're doing here today. So yeah, interesting times. I'm not saying that they're not a lot of pain out there, because our hearts and thoughts go out to the people that are going through enormous. I mean, some people have lost loved ones, which is tragic, as tragic as it gets. A lot of other people have lost businesses. A friend of yours and mine, Tom, that has that cafe where you and I meet from time to time. He's got 4 cafes. Had to close them all down, 2 in Greece, 2 in Australia. One he just opened up in Park Street 5 minutes before COVID was announced almost. Having to lay off employees, and employees can't pay their rent. And I mean, there's a whole chain of tragedy, but inevitably this will pass sooner than later. I think in the next 8 weeks, we're going to start feeling human again. We may not be back to full privileges, but I think we're going to be somewhat semi out of lockdown. It's interesting. Morrison's done a great job. Tom, I was talking on our webinar this morning. I think you might have listened to a bit of it. We're just talking about managing expectations. And right now, the leaders around the world have got an enormous job to manage the expectation. They don't want the community to feel like this is never going to end, but they don't want the community to think, great, this is all working, so you can kind of get back and start doing your normal stuff. It's a matter of, and it's the same in real estate. You certainly want a vendor to feel positive and optimistic and confident about the process, but you also don't want them to be unrealistic about the outcome as well. So the whole managing expectations thing is out there at the moment. But my best view, I'm far from an expert, my best view is, I think in 6 to 8 weeks, we've already seen the dial turn a bit. The number of new cases have started to come back in Australia. They've even started to come back in Spain and Italy, which is, USA is still going up, but a lot of countries now, it's coming down. I think as that continues to come down and the dial comes down towards single-digit new cases, under 20, they say, is a bit of a magical number. People are going to feel, okay, if they can breathe again, then I think we're going to hear some great treatments that are actually nailing this thing on the head and driving the stake through the heart of COVID. So those people that actually do get it, there's going to be a solution. And then, of course, the most important one will be the vaccine that prevents us from getting it in the future. Because once we go back to kind of semi-business as usual or life as usual, there are going to be outbreaks down the track. You know, in 3 months, there's going to be someone says, oh, great, you know, this suburb of Melbourne all of a sudden has got, you know, 6 cases again. So there's going to be, you know, little wobbly bits where people get nervous. But I do think in the next couple of months. But in the meantime, I think one of the key messages the three of us agree with is let's not wait. I mean, unless you've actually chosen to have an enforced holiday, which is fine. Some people are going to say, well, I'm going to spend it with the kids. I'm going to unplug my internet or whatever I'm going to do, maybe not answer the phone. If you're still working, there is still plenty of business out there. I was talking this morning, Tom, I think I mentioned it, Michael Dowling at our ride office, which is really the epicenter of in Australia or Sydney, where most of the corona started, because it's got a very high Asian population. And I think there was some connection from travel and so forth there. But it was anyway, it was a very high on the Richter scale. Last week, he did 43 private buyer appointments for listings that he's got, sold 2 properties. On Saturday alone, he did 29, or he and his team did 29 one-on-one buyer appointments. And David Cordes from Geelong, he mentioned also, Troy, on Saturday, he did 12 buyer appointments on a particular property that he launched. He got 6 offers, Tom, on the day. So out of the 12, 6 of them put a firm bid forward, and he sold it for 11,000 above asking price. I only say that to people that to make sure that people don't think that there's no business to be done. There is business out there if you're prepared to. Matt Steinwaite's great words on one of the first we had was, he said, we're just acting and working like nothing's changed. Yes, we're social distancing. Yes, we're doing the government things, but we're not kind of pretending that this is a whole new world. This is just like business as usual with a few social distancing things thrown in.
John and Troy, the clients that I've been speaking with and working with have found ways of getting, example, on Saturday, in half an hour, 7 buyers through. The system was very simple. What they do is they say, I'm going to be at the property at 10:30. I'm letting you know that you're to park your car there, that what I'll do is I'll text you as soon as the other buyer has walked out. When you receive the text, you can come in. I'm letting you know that when you do come in, that you're going to be walking into the property on your own, not with a big group of people. I'm going to ask you to do it as a quick inspection, and I'm going to let you know that my owners have said, if you're in fact-finding stage and you are sitting on the fence, that they would prefer that you'd look at it at a later time during health reasons. I'm getting agents that are saying to me, hey, we're still getting big buyers through using the text message service. And what we're also doing is having someone that is like super qualified, like pretty much they've seen the outside, they've seen the video inspection, they've actually had another layer of obstacle to get over, which is don't be wasting our time if you're not a serious buyer. And that's how they're putting deals together. And it won't surprise me, John, you were in real estate at a time where buyer appointments was how you build deep connected relationships with a buyer. You often back then had them in your car. Nowadays, it's less of that, and you meet them at a property. But I'm convinced that we're going to see larger increases of buyer appointments post-COVID-19 anyway, because agents are beginning to realise, get deep with highly qualified people.
Which is what Alex Jordan said this morning. He said, his life changed when his business went from being a mile wide and an inch deep to an inch wide and a mile deep. And so I agree. Look, for me, I love open for inspections and auctions, but they've made the industry very lazy. And I think this is another great thing, hopefully, that will come out of this, is going to be people realising that real estate isn't a one-day-a-week job where you prepare for Saturday, do it all on Saturday, and then turn up the next Saturday. There's lots of time to be showing buyer one-on-one appointments. And my success with one-on-one appointments as opposed to open home in terms of numbers, Tom, was 10 to 1. When literally, if I think I have 10 people through one-on-one appointments versus 10 at an open, I would have much stronger outcome from dealing with the one-on-one, because you're there, you get to walk through with them, you get to see their reaction, you get to deal with their tension and concerns, most of the time I take them for a cup of coffee around Paddington, the local cafe. So have you got some time? Let's go and sit down. Tell me, what do you like? What didn't you like? Let's talk through what else have I got. And I think that really is another benefit that will come from this period, is people start realising the great value of one-on-one, deep connected, and listening and asking questions. It opens, it's hand out brochures, open the door, yep, okay, pop through, good to see you, call me if you're interested. That sort of very superficial stuff. And yet one-on-one meetings, you do develop that serious connection. And I think the questions you ask and the feedback you get before, during and after a one-on-one meeting is priceless.
Similar to that, John and Tom, we've seen that with a lot of people when they're calling potential clients and even past clients right now. It's giving them the opportunity to take a step back and have a better and meaningful conversation, as opposed to just trying to transact or get an outcome to progress the call. So those that are speaking to their clients, and I'd recommend everyone on this, watching this, listening to this via Spotify and iTunes, is to get in touch with people, reach out and treat with them as, you know, an authentic human being, as opposed to just being the person that may be your next deal or potential deal in the months to come.
Yeah, Troy, I actually wrote it down word for word. Sonia Trelaw, she spoke at ARIC last year. All she does is ring up and says this, and she says, Tom, it's as simple as this. This has given me a return bigger than I'd ever thought in my life, and it's made me feel good. Hey, it's Sonia Trelaw. The purpose of my call is to simply see, is there any support or help I can give you during this time? That's it. She's forgotten about the sale and she's focused on the relationship, which is pretty much the short summary of what Alex Jordan talked about today. He basically said, forget about your commodity and focus on the relationship, right? And you're right, Troy. I think the fact that people have picked up driving time, less time sort of stress to get parking, has given them margin. Margin has given them space to be able to have a 8.5-minute conversation, not that 2-minute conversation you used to have before, where you were told, go make 50 calls, go get 30 connects, go get 3 appointments, tick it all off. Like, I've got to tell you, Matty Steinway, he's one of my favorite people on the planet, because he makes a lot of sense. He says, at the end of the day, people are put under a lot of pressure in real estate, thinking that they've got to have a Manila call center mentality, when people deep down are looking for a human connection. You know?
Yeah, that's brilliant. And we see that nowadays, Tom, with all our top agents. They all have deep roots into the community, both with knowledge, relationships. There's 4 things I was saying to the guys the other day, Tom. There's 4 things I think. Often people say to me, what are people looking for, or what have you got to do now in this environment? Well, the first one I love is Matt Steinway, act as if nothing's changed, really, in a sense. That doesn't mean you put it under the carpet and you're insensitive to people, but just get on, prospect, list, sell. It's pretty important, show properties. There's 4 things I think are important. One is you have to be calm, because at the moment there's so much noise and chaos, and we saw it with Alex Jordan today. If you are calm, if Alex Jordan walked into my place and I was fearful and thinking about, am I doing the right thing, and is anyone going to be interested? He walked in, just his energy would settle me down. So I think really important to be calm. Second thing is to be confident. You have to be confident, because right now there are transactions. That doesn't mean you're unrealistic and you say nothing's changed, the market's as good as it was, your price is unaffected. No. You say, if we go down the path, Tom, of we present the property right, we price it at today's level, we market it confidently, I qualify the buyers, and we negotiate confidently, we will get you the outcome you want probably within the next 2 or 3 weeks, because that's what's happening. We're finding our best agents are turning things around in a fortnight, days on market, because they have people that are going on market that are serious. They're telling them what it's worth today, not what it was worth 3 months ago. And they have hot buyers they're working with, and they're not dealing with the buyers that are thinking of buying in 6 months. They're dealing with the buyers that have said, Tom, I'm still happy to buy right now. So you've got to be calm. You got to be confident. Another key thing, which you've just touched on there, Tom, you have to be empathetic. You have to sit down and recognize this is not about how can I turn your fears into positives and how do I just get you to move forward, sign here as a buyer or seller. this is around saying, well, Tom, how are you and the family coping with it? How are you guys feeling about life? What are the things that concern you about putting your property on the market? Is it, geez, maybe that we'll get ridiculous offers? Is it we're going to look desperate to the community? Is it the safety factor around our family? And are people going to come in and leave COVID germs? I mean, what are the concerns? Because everyone now putting a property on the market, or indeed buying one, is going to have some level of concern. So bring it out. Just say, how are you feeling about this? I know it's a little bit chaotic out there, but we're finding things are moving forward. How about you? How are you feeling? And then the last one is you have to have a plan. You have to have a plan. You can't just go there and say, yeah, let's get on the market. Is the plan off market to start? Is it a soft launch? Is it just qualified buyers? Is it putting it on REA and Domain? Is it not? Is it putting a sign out front, or do you keep that for another 2 weeks? Is it auction, expressions of interest, private treaty? Is there a price? Is there a price range? And the answers are going to be a bit different for everyone because everyone's in a slightly different market. But you need to have a plan about where are you going to take me as a vendor? What are you going to do from today onwards that's going to get me my result in uncertain times? So calm, confident, empathetic, with a plan. You turn up and have a series of authentic conversations with your buyers and sellers. I was talking mainly about sellers, but the same approach to buyers. I've got to tell you, we've got people that are selling 2 and 3 properties a week at the moment. Not across the board. By the way, our sales have come back, as has everyone in the industry, but across the board, we still have agents that are selling 2 and 3 properties a week. And as we heard David Cordes of Geelong, 12 inspections, 6 offers on the same property, sold it in a day. That was the first day it launched. So in effect, he sold it in a day. So, we have to maintain that positive mindset about this. Otherwise, if you go into the cave, this will be over, by the way, in 5 minutes. I think,
Johnny, can I ask a favour? See these 3 bottles of water? I drank them in the last 40 minutes and I need to actually go to the bathroom.
That's right. We'll continue on.
Can you continue on?
Yeah. So, John, the other thing that I noticed is, apart from the fact of having a plan, is making sure that you can potentially adapt that plan as well. Because the plan you had 6 months ago for the way you did photography at a property, the way you treated buyers at a property, the way you engaged with them over the phone and email, that's changed. So for an example, I'm noticing the most successful agents out there are really focused on video right now, walking through the property, but not the sales pitch video that we're traditionally used to. They're doing more in-depth conversation about the property and more doing a walkthrough as opposed to a 30-second snippet of here's the home. Similar to that, they're working closer on their social media presence to try and cast the net as far as possible to show that deals are getting done. We've just heard countless examples, and I know there's people probably watching this on Facebook and all the other social platforms making comment about doing deals right now. That's fantastic. But have you adapted your current plan in the market to make sure that you're reaching every possible customer that you can?
Yeah, I think you're right, Troy. There's different levels of video. I still think a professional video is almost an essential item as well. But we know right now that, just seeing, a bit of the lounge room, panning out to the garden, bit of the view and that, which a lot of professional videos do beautifully. We know that's good. But now, since a lot of people almost have to replace the tour or the inspection to a degree with a virtual inspection, I love it. I mean, Lisa Novak's, Lisa's done a spectacular job over there on the Northern Beaches with it. If you haven't checked out Lisa's, I know Tom's interviewed Lisa on a number of occasions. That's a great example of walking through. Matt Edwards from our Ballarat office doing a sensational job with virtual open homes and virtual tours. So he's another one. If you go to our McGrath Ballarat Facebook page, you'll see some of the videos they've been doing. And what I love about both those videos is they're not necessarily the most polished. They're certainly professional, but they're real, they're raw, they're authentic. They're, just show you, there's the view, have a look at that view, and you'll have to wake up to that every morning. Now I'll bring you back to the lounge room, which is next to it. So I think there's room for both levels of videos. And I think, now playing around with live streaming video is another possibility. I know our Ballarat team did, I think, 7 or 8 live stream videos about a week ago. And off the back of that, a lot of people watched or watch the video subsequently, and then appointed to go and see the property off the back of it. So, Tommy, we're just talking about, the importance of video now. It was always important, in my opinion, but it's even more important now. And whether you do it professionally or you just do your walkthrough with your iPhone, which is, by the way, gives you a pretty good outcome.
The funny thing about it is all of this stuff we heard maybe 5 or 6 years ago at ARIC, saying that video is so important, and we've all seen that. What I like most right now, John and Tom, is the fact that all the technology that we've wanted to implement maybe in 6, 12, 18, 24 months time, it's all been rushed forward to right now because we've had to adapt. And, the people, it shouldn't be this environment that actually makes you start using that technology. And what would be a really disappointing thing is once we get past this, and I agree, John, it's probably only going to be 5 minutes, but once we get past this is everyone goes back into their old ways. Because I really think there's a massive opportunity for the smart agents to adapt and implement, but then really set the market pace and really outpace the competition, the changes they're making right now.
Yeah. Can I on those videos, and I know what was said while I was away, but one of the things I've learned out of these, let's call them the raw and authentic property videos, I noticed that I make an assessment on not only on the property when I'm watching these videos, but I'm also making an assessment of the agent. And I can't help but think to myself that in some ways, these property videos are a little bit like the Wentworth Courier was 10 years ago, that you're featuring a property, but you're also noticing the agent. And some of the things I noticed that I like about the ones I've seen, because I've been following them, I like the ones where you find the person seems to be the same person on and off camera. I like where they're the same person. The other bit I like is the ones that they're intelligent enough to, sometimes I find that they look better if they're PA or if someone else is holding the camera and they're sort of following them through, right? I think that helps. I think the other thing that helps also is that a couple of agents have gone to the trouble to actually get some wireless sound, because the sound helps the video look better. All these little things that some agents are doing to make their videos stand out. And of course, it's not that expensive to actually add text at the bottom of each video. Like it's about $1 a minute, right? So you're doing a 2-minute video, it's $2. And I know what, both you guys are like. I've seen you in the past. You'll turn your mobile and you'll look at a video and you'll often actually play it with no sound, right? So what you're doing is allowing for the people that are actually watching video with no sound because they don't want to interrupt people. But I think to myself, there's a great opportunity for people to stand out, particularly now that News Corp, I know, has let go of, at this stage, and I don't know how permanent it is, but 60 papers, the Wentworth Courier and, the Inner West Courier and North Shore Times. So real estate agents are going to need to still stay connected and stay visible in their marketplace and communities. And I think videos are definitely going to be the way. And I know REA have actually created the platform that allows agents to have virtual inspections, they call them now,
Yeah,
John and Tom, there's free text translation apps out there as well, and a lot of the social platforms, they're integrating with those apps, so you can pretty much do the translation or the subtitles.
What's the best one you guys have come across? Do you have a recommendation?
The best, listen, the guys that have been smashing it is a business called Prime Estate Agents, Malcolm Quinn, and they're in Harvey Bay. So you got to have a look at them. So and I actually have got I did a webinar with him last week because they were doing these videos prior to COVID-19. They call them the curbside video. So the way it works is one agent holds the phone, the other agent's going through raw and authentic. Then what happens is they spend 10 minutes and they put it through an app. And I'm going to see if I can bring up the app. Susan, if you are watching this, if you don't mind typing in the comments, the app, there's a free app. All they do is they put the video off your phone into this app. They sort of cut it at one spot, cut it on another spot. The end product, look, it's not going to look as good as having 2 videographers with their flashlights and their wireless mics sitting there, right? But I have to say, we're moving into a world now that is saying, like we're seeing it on television, where people are sort of doing, sometimes the quality of the content is not so good, but I think people are seeing past that. They like the fact that they're seeing something that's live, raw, and authentic. So if anyone wants to go off and look at Prime Agents, they're in Harvey Bay.
The other thing, Tom, I agree 100% what you said about not only do you look at the property, you look at the agent, and most people in an area that are looking at properties are also thinking of selling, or they might have sold. But I look at Matty Edwards from our Ballarat office, and I'm thinking that's the sort of person I'd like taking buyers through my place.
Yes.
He's got a bit of a sense of humour. He's got great product knowledge. Same with Lisa at Novak. I mean, these are people that you're not only seeing the property, you're seeing the agent on show. And I think this is, if you're not doing it, I actually think you're going to start post-COVID or even during COVID, you're going to start losing out. So really,
the other thing is with that, just as we start to move on to the next topic, is I find myself always watching one video, like you'll grab one and you'll see it in your newsfeed, and then you'll start going down like the Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole, and you'll start watching all these other videos from that same person. So the branding point of view and the branding perspective, it's a massive opportunity for agents to really show their authentic self and connect with their clients, because you don't know whether it's the live stream video you're doing of a property inspection like we watched last week with Matt John, or it may be a video that they did a market update 2 or 3 months ago. You get engaged and you start watching all these videos because we have a little bit more time.
Too true.
Yeah. Can I ask both you guys, every morning at 9 o'clock to around 9:45 a.m., you do a Zoom. You generally have a real estate agent in your team that you interview. I believe this is you committed, John and Troy, that you would do this to the end of COVID-19 lockdown. It's been about 4 weeks, and I have to say to you, I've had a number of McGrath people tell me that they feel ever so connected to McGrath now, being the brand and yourself, John. I mean, that's got to be, we use the term, some of the best gifts in life come badly wrapped, the silver lining. All of a sudden, you actually have got an opportunity to connect with every individual, 300 people there at the one time, this consistency, this repeatable connection with people. Can I ask, what are some of the things that you think at your own business or your own personal life that you've learned? What are some of the learnings you've learned out of COVID, Troy and John, that you may continue in your life, or maybe they've just shifted a thought in your life?
I think, we've already spoken about some of the technological stuff, which is more transactional. And I think going forward, I mean, I don't see us doing a daily webinar, but I certainly see us doing a far more regular contact with all our people, which could be a couple of times a week as a minimum. So I think there's that. I think there is people reevaluating priorities. I think we saw this at 9/11, Tom, in particular, back in 2001, when people started realising that they weren't spending the time with their family, that they weren't looking after their health. So I think for all of us, there's a good wake-up call around prioritising life and realising that business is not the primary thing in most people's lives, shouldn't be. Health and family comes before it. So there's been a shift towards that. I think as I hear the agents, mindset now is more important than ever and more obvious for those, because this COVID has polarised. You've got some people that have absolutely gone into a cold sweat and a cave and just doing nothing because they're just so petrified. And you got other people like Matt Steinway we're acting like nothing's changed. We're just getting on with business. And I think the polarization is really obvious now, and it shows people the importance in the world of business and sales of having the right mindset, the right conversations, staying calm, staying focused, having a plan and pivoting the plan, because things are going to change. Let's hope that there's no COVID for the rest of our lives, another one, but there'll be something else. We've seen stock market crash, tech wreck, 9/11, COVID. We've seen so many things in the last 10 or 20 years that there'll be other stuff that goes. So I think it's around mindset. How do you deal with these things? And the fortunate thing, I think, for us, Tom, people of our vintage and perhaps people that have led companies and been around strong leaders, over the last 20 years. We've actually learned that this will pass. Don't panic. Yes, we do need to make some adjustments. We might even need to make some hard calls, reducing, you know, we reduced the salaries of our head office staff the other day by 30%. It was a hard call, but, you know, we consulted with a number of people and we thought about it. And we thought we can do nothing, probably not the most sensible when revenues are inevitably going to drop for a period. We could sack a few people, lose some great talent, and then, you know, that'll be kind of do it. Or we can sort of do a smaller reduction across a larger group. And we took that because I remember in the GFC, I remember one of the lessons I took out of that, Tom, was when you're faced with something like this, what you don't want is death by 1,000 cuts. You don't want to do a little change here, oh, got to do some more, got to do some more. You actually, if you're making a change and you got to take a bit of pain, rip the Band-Aid off and do it. So I kind of learnt that. So we brought that lesson into this environment where, you know, we could kind of do nothing, wait a bit longer, dabble around the edges, do a 5 or 10% here. We said, no, let's do it right. So the board and the executive have taken a 40% pay cut because we wanted to lead from the front and lead by example. And the rest of the team at 30, we made a decision, Tom, that anyone at or below 70,000 a year, which we feel in most of the places that we work, certainly in Sydney and Melbourne, the big cities, is kind of, you know, what you need to live, not luxuriously, but live. So we decided that, you know, anyone at that level wouldn't get any pay reduction. So we added some things that were empathetic to different situations. But when you're out there, you've got to learn that if you have to pivot, you have to pivot. If you have to make some tough decisions, you have to make some tough decisions. But your mindset throughout all of that can remain strong and focused and calm. And our job every day on the webinar is to educate and inspire. So we want to make sure people that might have had a bad night's sleep and have bad dreams and wake up and only got 3 hours sleep and they're worried about this, we want them to come and have somewhere to start each day. Not Carl Stefanovic, with great respect and love to Carl, but Carl's reading, you know, every 2 minutes about more COVID disasters. We want it to be an alternative. Dock in. Let's show you some of the good stuff that's working. Let's share some of that stuff from some of our top agents. And people like yourself.
Johnny, let me share a story of how a guy went from insomnia and petrified to sleeping cleanly in 24 hours. So the conversation was, mate, I can't handle it. I know that come June, July, I'm going to get smashed. And I said, why June, July? He said, it's really simple. I'm going to have a bad April and May. I can tell. That's going to fast forward in cash settlements in June and July. I've sat there and I don't know what to do. I haven't slept for 3 nights. So on one piece of paper, all we did is say, let's forecast. How far down do you think you're going to be in April and May? And he says, I'm confident we're going to be down 2/3. I think that we'll do 1/3 of the deals. I said, okay. So then I said, work that out. Fast forward to June and July. What can you do right now to help that gap get better? What can you do? He says, well, one of the suggestions was yours. He goes, the entire team drops, I think he said 30, I can't remember, 30, 40%. I said, what else? He said, I can actually go off and speak to a bank because the interest rates now are record low, and I can say I think I may need this money for this period of time, right? And the banks were very surprising, very easy. They said no, there was no hiccups, no problems. What do you need there? No problems. Then he turned around and he said, to be honest with you, you know, my own personal spending, that needs to be reassessed. And the weird thing is people are actually spending less because they're actually not going out. So if you think about it, right, where do you go? If you go to your place of work, if you're going to work, if not, you're pretty much going home, and once every week you're going to Coles. So he worked out that if he actually did those 3 things, that he could actually be okay. And he goes, I just feel a lot better, because sometimes the problem is bigger in your head than in real life. And humans beings have got a terrible thing of catastrophizing. I got to tell you, I'm in that bracket. I remember early on when when I first got unwell, I used to visualize funerals. I used to visualize that. And I don't know who it was. It was someone in the hospital system. He says, listen, just narrow your focus to a day. He goes, because humans are terrible at estimating the future. They have faulty thinking. He goes, just narrow things to per day. And you know what? One good day followed by one good day followed by one good day. You've got a decent week at the end of it,
The other thing, Tom, that as you were saying that, and I think you gave that person some great counsel and just getting it out of your head into the real world, especially if you're on the other side of the conversation, you've got a great strategic advisor like you, is brilliant. But you would also, I think, once sort of business as usual returns, you could factor some of your commissions from exchange to settlement, and might cost you 2 or 3%, but you get paid earlier, so some of that cash flow could be brought forward. And there are things you can do. Go to the bank, increase your overdraft, or get an overdraft. Factor in some of your commissions once the market bounces back. Cut your discretionary spending personally. Cut your discretionary spending at a business level. Ask another mutual friend of ours, Tommy, that's connected to the real estate industry. He's got a staff of 27, and he said to me he was going to have to put off 6 people. And he said he thought about it, spoke with his wife. He went in and he said, look, I've got to put off 6 people, or there is an alternative. I've done the numbers. If everyone takes a 50% pay cut for the next 2 months, we can get by. And everyone said, yep, we'll take the 50% pay cut. So that was another great community decision within that particular business that really worked out well. And they said, well, whether it was fear that they might have been one of the 6, who knows, or just community minded, they didn't want anyone to go. But they said, we'll take the 50% pay. We'll tighten the belt for the next couple of months. So I think we are incredibly resilient as a group of individuals. If we don't panic and we seek the right counsel, everything is figure outable.
Yes, I love that word, even though it doesn't exist, but it's a good word. But if there's anyone watching this right now that is got that anxiety feeling, don't forget, even those measures that we talked about, when you add simple things like, I can pretty much tell you, a couple of big clients have said that they've spoke to the bank, they've freezed principal and interest payments. So if you are a business, they've freezed it. They've said, we're freezing it. You're not making those payments. Then you add $1,500 JobKeep allowance to the necessary people. Hey, things are nowhere near as catastrophic, which is what catastrophic thinking is, as what they are. The secret thing is to do your thinking on paper, right? If you can do your thinking on paper, because you've got this committee going into your head that on the one hand, here's Harry Dent saying prices are going to drop by 50%. On the, other hand, you've got, someone saying this is all going to be fine in 4 weeks. And what you want to do, I'll never forget Rupert Murdoch once. I've sat through about 4 meetings with Murdoch. 2 was I to do presentations, and 2 was I was sitting there with others doing presentations. And I'll never forget Rupert once said, I want you to not, because someone said, oh, is that the favorable picture? And Rupert says, what I want you to give me is not better than it is, not worse than it is, but what you think it is. Mm-hmm. Right? And I think people can sometimes fall into 2 traps. Some are catastrophic thinkers. Then you've got a group of people that I think they're more than positive. They're delusional thinkers. I
think it was Ray Dalio that said, never see things better than they are, but also never see things worse than they are. Because both of them have bad outcomes. One's delusional, the other one actually sends you into this kind of mode where you can't do anything. So I think, that's really, really, really interesting. So, look, I think the overall message is it's uncomfortable, and we'll get through it. We'll get through it sooner than later. I reckon in 2 months' time, Australia anyway will be feeling relatively normal relative to how we are at the moment. We're in lockdown. I mean, I think Morrison, as I said to you the other day, Tommy, he's a genius, whether you voted for him or not. Right now, he's got this country in lockdown without ever saying we're in lockdown, because 60% of what lockdown is about, we're kind of doing, but he's never had to say those words. So I think people are feeling, now we might have to, who knows, touch wood, we might have to go into lockdown tomorrow, but right now he's achieved something which is, they've turned down the dial on new cases. So that's what we've been trying to get. He hasn't officially locked us down, but he's done a number of the measures in stage 2, I think we're at, stage 2 or 3. And I'm not being critical of anyone that has gone into lockdown in other countries. I think, you've got to do what you've got to do. But, we are able to survive. Deals are still being done. Yes, you'll have to rein in your spending for the next couple of months. Unfortunately, some people may lose their jobs, but they'll get them back again. I mean, there'll be a surge. My experience post most of these sort of tragic events is there is a surge of optimism post. People want to get back out and start living again, whether that's buying a property, going to lunch and dinner at restaurants, going and seeing their friends. They want to get out and live again. And so I think a lot of what we lose in the next couple of months, we're going to pick up in the next 6 to 12 months afterwards. So I think...
John, I'm sure you did, but I'll confirm that. Did you work in real estate in 1987, 88, 89?
Yeah, I've been in real estate since 82.
Okay. So, John, I got into real estate in 87, 88, and I still remember my boss at the time said, don't waste your time. If you recall, John, prices doubled. They literally doubled. So just picture a house now in Newtown being worth 1.5, it went to $3 million, right? And my boss said, all you do is give them a key. They'll give you $50. That's the deposit. They will go look at the property and they're going to come back and they're going to sign a thing called a preliminary agreement, right? Do you remember the preliminary agreement?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Troy, you don't remember the preliminary agreement, do you?
No, I was only 2.
You were pretty much going into high school year 7, maybe, right? Or maybe not. Maybe even you were in public. So what happened, John, is so things were booming. They'd come back and they just buy a property, and then all of a sudden it came to a standstill. And in 1989, interest rates were 17, 18%. I still remember sitting at an open for inspection in Roselands for 17, 18 weeks, right? And no one came along, right? No one came along. I mean, there's more buyers now during the COVID lockdown than there was in 1989, right? And there was no lockdown. And I still remember a buyer showed up at Rogers Avenue in Roselands after 18 weeks, me, 20-year-old guy sitting at an open, and I thought, hooray, the first buyer's come along. Car pulled up slowly, opens up the window and said, do you know where Roseland Shopping Centre is, right? So it was the wrong address. So what happened is, but here's something weird that happened. Subsequently, over the next couple of years, the market listings went crazy. People would sell. People had to sell. And property started to turn over. And one of my things that I want to say to people watching this video or listening to it on iTunes or Spotify, and John and Troy, you're going to understand this, is that if you were a real estate agent pre to COVID-19 that had a strategy which was you'd go to the door, open up the door, casually say, have a quick look through, and the market put the deal together, you're going to struggle, because I actually do think it's going to need someone that can bring two people that may have resistance in a transaction. You're going to have one person that's going to have fear that prices might drop furthermore. You're going to have another owner that's going to have concerns that maybe now is not the best time to sell. And it's going to need people that have got the tonality, the proper intent, the skill, someone like Alex Jordan that can sit there and say, this is what it means to you as a seller. This is what it means to you as a buyer. And there are going to be certain people that are going to be able to do deals. Unfortunately, the product of some of the agents over the last 5 years, some of them are going to struggle with those conversations because they basically weren't having them. The market was having them for them.
Unless they reinvent. I mean, it's not too late to reinvent. You're right, 100%, Tom, that this is not an order-taking market. This is not a normal market. This is a professional negotiators market. And people like Wayne Vaughan who say this is the best market for him because this is what he was born to do business in, is tough markets. So it's not too late, especially for people like that are on your real estate gym. I mean, a lot of people have gone to your courses and they've listened to it and they've listened to MDA, but they're not doing the work in between between times to practice it. They get a bit inspired in the moment. They pick up the odd thing. You have to redesign yourself. And now a lot of people have the time at home. Redesign your listing presentation. What are the 5 concerns or issues a buyer might have right now? And what is your response to those? I mean, and maybe we can even do that next week when we do the session. What are the 3 to 5 issues that a buyer could have and the 3 to 5 issues a seller to have? And what's your professional response? And as Matt Steinway said, and Alex said it this morning, I can't come up with a magical sentence to cure everyone's issues, concerns, and fears. There are going to be some times where I just say to someone, Tom, I think you should hang on to the home for the next few years. Really, I think it's the best situation. You can do it. The price you're looking for, it's not going to be forthcoming. You're not desperate. Why don't we just mothball it for a year or 2? I mean, sometimes that. So I'm not saying that you can come up with an approach that's going to resolve every situation, but as you did with that person you were talking to that had the sleepless nights, there is an approach if you work through it and understand where they're at, and that's the beginning of dealing with every objection. Is not just thinking what's the count of this objection? What do I say? It's actually connecting with the person and understanding why they'd be feeling that way, and saying I totally understand. In fact, I was watching Chris Voss the other day, Troy and Tom. You remember he spoke at ARIC 4 or 5 years ago. Brilliant, and he was saying, he called it, I'm going to say, strategic empathy. I think he said that was one of his key tips around negotiation, was strategic empathy. Is really getting so deep into their concern, their issue, their position, whether you're negotiating or whether you're dealing with a concern, that you absolutely feel where they're at. And that is the starting point for getting them through it. So rather than just saying to a buyer, well, you're going to own it for 10 years, so don't worry about it, sort of thing. And by the way, owning it for 10 years is one of the solutions. Is you are going to own it for 10 years, and if you think you're ever going to pick the top or the bottom, you're crazy. But you do need to empathise first to genuinely be able to say, Tom, I totally understand why you'd be a bit concerned. In fact, most of the clients that have bought property from me in the last 2 weeks have had exactly the same concerns as you. Let me tell you why they moved forward, why they actually got to a point where they were comfortable moving forward. So it starts with empathy, and then because people want to feel that you feel what they're feeling, and then you can move on with a solution or not. And as Matt Steinway said, if someone's not ready to buy and they talk to them and I tell them my view on the market and they're still not ready to buy, no problem. We'll be in touch in a month or 2. I'm going to put you on my list of buyers, and we're going to do that. The other thing, Jess Smith from our Canberra office, Tom, that you know very well, she's a dynamo of a young lady and a young agent. She said for every vendor in her pipeline, she puts them into a 30, 60 or 90-day plan. For the people that must sell today, they have no choice. They're desperate or they're just fully committed. They bought another property. She's got a 30-day plan how to sell a property. People that aren't must sell desperate, but they kind of have to shift it sooner than later, she's got a 60. The 90-day plan is kind of post-COVID. For people that are saying, hey, why don't you call me when you're ready? And she'll say, okay, well, let's get the photos done, the videos and whatever. If I have a red hot buyer at a super duper pre-COVID price, I'll call you. Otherwise, I'll let you know how it's going. And then we can launch. Because she said it's a bit like Christmas, she said, and she wasn't being unsensitive or rude about this, but she said, when you've got Christmas, you've got to get all this business done because there's going to be a period of, lockdown, which is no one works for 2 or 3 weeks. And so she said, right now I'm working like that. I'm working on the assumption that there probably will be a lockdown. This was a week ago. But she said, so I'm getting all the deals done. I'm getting all the properties listed, all the photos taken, getting all that done. So then if we go into lockdown, akin to Christmas, off the back of that, I can relaunch all these with a bang. And I think if you don't have your listings right, your property's ready to go, the best time to be selling property is going to be immediately post-COVID, when they ring a bell and says, okay, Australia, be careful. Don't be silly, but you can now get back to work. You can now go and have dinner at a restaurant. You can now jog in a group of 10 people. I think there's going to be this surge of optimism and energy. So you need to be prospecting, and you need to have a plan for every client, but it's not going to be the same plan. The 30-day clients are going to have a different plan to a 90-day client. That'd be my view.
Troy, before we finish off, I want to ask you, you've sat through 3 weeks of star agents. You're the main connector in terms of education at McGrath there. And you're also been participating in the online auctions, which I have to tell you, I'm not so convinced on. I've had an open mind on the whole process. I actually think go post-COVID, and I had a few auctioneers get upset with me. I mean, I always say the truth, like even if it doesn't suit me. And I do work in auction world, and I just thought to myself, hey, they serve a small purpose, but I do think post COVID-19, I think Troy and Scott Kennedy Green and Edward Riley are going to be sitting there in front of people doing an on-site auction, putting on a great event for the local community, and using their skill to actually hopefully get 5 or 10% more because of something that they can do. I think that's going to happen. I think there's going to be this added layer of people that want to bid and can't be there. Maybe they're going to use technology now instead of using a phone. But I do see the day of open houses and auctions actually being set in stone in the way real estate agents do. Troy, do you want to add anything on that? I know.
No, Tom, I think, the very best right now are getting into routines and habits that, will get them through this next tranche of change. Online auctions, do I particularly love being in front of the camera and not engaging with an audience? No, but do I know that that does serve our clients in the best current environment? Yes. So I look forward to the day that I can be standing in front of 20, 30, 40 people, even 5 people in a room or in a backyard of a property, because I just think that that's where I get most excited. But I also know that there are people right now that need to do transactions, and the best platforms out there are the online auctions. So we still have to serve our clients. And I think that's probably, one of my final thoughts, if I can start to go there, because we've been going for a little while now, is the routines and the habits we set up now are going to set us free, but it is all about servicing our clients and our customers to make sure that their interests and what they're going through, they don't feel isolated or alone. We are all in this together, and I think the more that we can give right now will play benefit into the future. Give us in quality of information, give us in quality of case studies, give us in servicing and having empathy with every client we deal with. I really think that's going to set the agents up for success. And I think everyone that's listening to this, whether it be on iTunes or Spotify or on your Facebook page as a live stream, that would be one thing that I would say, don't unwaver from. The work that you've been doing, yeah, it might feel as if this week's harder than most, but the work you've been doing and the care you've been giving your clients has really set you up for a successful tail end of 2020, when we can look back and think COVID was a time of change, and we really did make some changes for the better.
Yeah.
Well said, Troy. I mean, that sort of conversation, you should be sitting on the right side of Scott Morrison doing a press conference. That was extraordinary. Next to the Hunt, the chief medical officer, which I must say that has actually now officially gone, and this is not being sensationalist. You know who I'm talking about. I forgot what his first name. I think it's Brendan Hunt. He could be. I'm not quite sure. He sits there. He's actually said, we now have definitely flattened the curve in Australia, because they've had enough data over a number of days which says that it's going down. And, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have, like in share markets, all of a sudden something happens there. But what you're seeing is at a higher level, a curve that's going down. And that's very positive, because 2 weeks ago, certain people thought that this was going to be like a movie where there'd only be a few people left on the planet alive. And that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, exactly right. But I think, Tom, part of the scare tactics there, and I don't say that rudely at all, it's again the managing expectations, is that if they hadn't given people the worst case scenario, people wouldn't have made the good quality decisions that almost all are making today. So there's something to be said about, you got to say to people, hey, if you're crazy out there, this could get very, very ugly. If you're sensible and disciplined for a short period of time, we will bring this under control. So yeah, kudos to all of them, doing great. And shout out to all the healthcare workers, I got to tell you, what they're doing every day, going into the battle, into hospitals full of COVID germs and into scenarios. And we've seen Italy, I think they've had like 55 doctors die from corona in the Italian medical system through catching it through their patients predominantly. Anyone that's out there that might watch this, who could be in healthcare, who has family, friends, siblings, spouses in it, please thank them on behalf of everyone, because they are the true heroes. When you look back at the end of your life and you think about heroes in life you've come across, it's going to be these guys, because every single day for in many cases, maybe not so much the doctors, but for the nurses and healthcare workers, for not that big a salary, these guys are going out there working long hours on their feet the whole time, and it's just.
Yeah, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Most of these even an oncologist that works at RPA's on a couple of $100,000 a year, right? 200 grand a year, right? These are people that are sitting there putting on this PPE uniform, concerned about having to have it on. Some of them have a shield on. Some they struggle with the whole thing for a couple of $100 grand a year. And in real estate, we've got people that are 25 years of age that are sort of earning that money easily in 6 months' time, right? So we've got to be grateful. And a big shout out also, John and Troy, to the property managers, because I actually think they have been the doctors and nurses of the real estate industry in the last couple of weeks. I had one client of mine last night tell me in the last 4 days, they had 700 tenants. They got a rent roll of 3,000. They had 700 tenants that rang up and saying, what can you do for me? And on that point, before we finish off, I feel strongly about this, because there's a genuine group of tenants that have been impacted. They've lost their job as an anytime fitness trainer. They've lost their job working as a cafe barista, right? And what happens is they've been impacted. And then there's another group of tenants who haven't been impacted, who have been a bit opportunistic here. And what they've done is they've got on the front foot and saying, hey, how can I get something out of this situation? Because, you know, when Scott Morrison did make that press conference, he didn't go into the detail, and he actually said, I want to let you know there are 6 months you can't get evicted. And a lot of people just sort of jump to conclusions, and property managers have had to learn the art of managing empathy and telling people at the same time, hey, we're still waiting to see what the government's going to say about this, because there is packages coming in the next day or two in regards to that. And you've just reminded me, I might get Scott Dutton, the king of the crucial conversation. I think I need to get Scott Dutton on from Byron Bay. Scott Dutton, John and Troy, Scott Dutton sends me a text message every day with photos of Byron Bay saying, by the way, he picks the best ones, right?
Yeah.
He picks the best ones, and he just sends a message and he says, how's life? How are things going there for you? Right?
He's a good guy. He gave a great speech to Eric last year. Great speech.
Yeah. All right, John and Troy, thank you so much. Hey, let's.
We're back on weekly. Are we?
Yeah, we're back on weekly. It's
We're
going
back.
to hit. It's
We're back.
going to hit Spotify. It's going to hit iTunes. It's going to hit every possible platform. There he goes. He's doing the My Cousin Blad rap there. John's pumped, and we're going to, and we might even live stream it again. And you know what I think we're going to do in the next few weeks? We're going to get a guy or girl in real estate. We're going to get them come on the Zoom, and we're going to sit there and we're going to talk them through an issue, because I know, John, you wanted to do that a few weeks ago, and now's the perfect time to do it.
Awesome. Well, we'll see everyone next week, you guys and our viewers.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks a lot. See you later.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
right.
Bye.